Okay, let's get right into it. We're going to unpack one of the most uh, devastating and conclusive moments in modern history.
We really are.
We're diving straight into the final act of World War II in Europe, the Battle for Berlin in the spring of 1945.
And this wasn't just another battle. I mean, this was the final reckoning. The German leadership, they knew it was over.
But they fought anyway.
They fought until the city was, well, literally pulverized. It was this massive violent clash that finished the war in Europe and completely changed the map of the continent forever.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to give you a really detailed view of those last desperate weeks. We'll look at the Soviet attack, the brutal street fighting.
And what life was like for the civilians trapped in all that chaos.
Right, and how a great European capital was just reduced block by block to rubble. So to understand how it all ended, we have to look at the beginning of that end. It all kicks off in the last weeks of April 1945.
Yeah, and the scale of the Soviet Red Army bearing down on Berlin was just, it is unprecedented.
And what were they up against? What did the German defense even look like?
Well, that's the thing. It was almost pathetic. By April, the professional German army was essentially gone. They lacked everything.
Like fuel, ammunition?
Almost no fuel for their few remaining tanks, and ammunition was critically low. So the defense of the city fell to these really desperate units.
Who are we talking about here?
A tragic mix, really. Teenage boys, some as young as 13 or 14 from the Hitler Youth, and elderly men forced into service. The Volkssturm, they called it, the People's Storm.
It's hard to even imagine being, 15 years old and being told to fight against millions of hardened Soviet soldiers.
It's horrifying. It just shows the total desperation. And while this was happening inside the city, the Red Army was completing its encirclement.
So they're closing a ring around it.
A massive armored ring. We're talking tens of miles long, closing like a vice. Tanks, infantry, checkpoints on every road. They cut off every single escape route.
The military imbalance must have been staggering.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the firepower.
The key was the artillery. To force a quick collapse, the Soviets used an incredible concentration of it. Thousands of guns.
And not just regular cannons.
Right. No, they had the famous Katyusha rocket launchers.
Yeah.
Not very precise, but they just saturated entire city blocks with explosives.
So it wasn't about hitting a specific target.
Not at all. It was about breaking fortifications, yes, but also breaking the psychological will to fight. The sheer number of shells landing in the city center meant Berlin was going to fall in days, not weeks. It was inevitable.
And that kind of intense pressure takes us right down to the ground level, into the streets.
Yeah.
This wasn't a battle fought in open fields with neat lines. This was violent, close-quarters combat, house by house, floor by floor.
It was one of the most destructive urban battles in modern warfare. The city itself became the enemy for both sides. The streets were just impossible.
What do you mean?
Imagine huge piles of concrete, bricks, burned-out cars, fallen power lines, all tangled together. Tanks couldn't move through the narrow alleys.
So if the heavy armor can't move, the fighting has to be done by individuals.
Right, exactly. The advantage shifted to the infantry. And, crucially, to snipers.
Hiding in the ruins.
High up in the shells of buildings, yeah. Targeting Soviet officers, trying to slow the advance one person at a time. The Soviets had to use flamethrowers and machine guns just to clear a single block.
And while all this is happening on the surface,
Yeah.
thousands of civilians were trying to survive somewhere else entirely.
In a different world, really. Underground, hiding in cramped bunkers, air raid shelter.
Basements and the subway tunnels, the U-Bahn.
That's right. The underground became this sort of desperate temporary city. But the conditions were horrific. Dark, no fresh air if the power failed and the ventilation stopped.
And food and water must have been an agonizing issue.
Constant scarcity. Clean water was almost impossible to find. When people did risk going outside, they'd wait in these huge lines for tiny rations.
And the public health threat.
It was immense. Poor sanitation in those padded tunnels meant disease spread fast. Serious threats, like typhus and cholera.
And just to pause there for a second for anyone listening, typhus is usually spread by lice in crowded, unhygienic places. And cholera comes from contaminated water. So with the water and sewage systems broken, those diseases could just explode through the population.
Precisely. The war was leaving behind a humanitarian time bomb, even as the fighting was ending.
Which brings us to the symbolic climax of the whole battle. The main Soviet target was clear: the Reichstag building.
Right, the old German parliament. The Nazis hadn't really used it in years, but capturing it symbolized wiping out the Nazi regime entirely.
And it was heavily defended.
It basically became a fortress. Its thick stone walls could take artillery hits, so the Soviets had to fight their way inside, room by room. The fight for that one building lasted several days.
I'm guessing they couldn't just use their big guns in that kind of close quarters fight.
No, it was back to brutal hand-to-hand combat. Soviet troops used flamethrowers to clear rooms, tossing grenades down hallways. It was bloody, desperate fighting.
And then came that iconic moment, the one everyone has seen in photos.
On the night of April 30th, Soviet soldiers finally made it to the roof and planted their red flag over the building.
A signal to the entire world that Berlin had fallen.
And chillingly, on that exact same day, Adolf Hitler, just a few miles away in his own underground bunker, realized it was over.
He knew the Red Army was closing in.
He did. And to avoid being captured, he took his own life.
His death must have just created immediate chaos for what was left of the German command.
It did. The figurehead of the regime was gone. And it removed the final, real obstacle to surrender. With him gone, the military leaders knew any more fighting was just needless death.
So that led directly to the official surrender.
On the morning of May 2nd, the German general in charge of the defense, Helmuth Weidling, ordered all his remaining forces to stop fighting, to lay down their weapons.
And then, silence.
A strange, heavy silence. Survivors talked about how unnerving it was after weeks of constant noise. White flags started appearing in the ruins. The battle was over.
But the end of the shooting just brought the sheer scale of the destruction into focus. The human cost alone was staggering.
Hundreds of thousands of soldiers killed, wounded, or missing, and the civilian losses were enormous. From shelling, violence, lack of medical care, just one of the highest death tolls of the entire war packed into a few weeks.
And for those who survived, what did their city even look like on May 3rd?
It barely functioned. The city's life support was severed. The electrical grid was broken. No power, no lights, no heat.
And the water systems.
Burst pipes everywhere. People had to get dirty water from puddles. And as we said, the broken sewage system meant the risk of typhus and cholera was incredibly high. The bridges, railways, subways, all destroyed or buried.
So for the survivors, the mission became just that, survival.
Day to day, the first priority was finding food. The Allies set up soup kitchens, but the black market exploded.
People trading their belongings for food.
Exactly. A watch for a loaf of bread, a wedding ring for some potatoes, that was the new currency.
And this is where the story of resilience really begins. You can't rebuild a city buried in rubble without a massive effort.
An effort that largely fell to women. We have to talk about the Trümmerfrauen, the rubble women.
An incredible story.
It really is. These women took on the task of clearing the streets by hand. They formed human chains to pass stones and bricks, sorting them, cleaning the reusable ones to build new foundations.
And with hunger being a constant threat, I imagine they used every bit of land they could find.
Every empty lot, every park, every patch of soil between the ruins was turned into a small garden, planting potatoes, beans, anything to get through the coming winter.
Such an amazing pivot to just pure survival. And while the people are rebuilding, the political future of the city is being decided.
Right. The Soviet military took initial control, but Berlin was always going to be governed by all four major allies.
The Soviets, the U.S., Great Britain, and France.
Yes. And they divide the city into four sectors. What's crucial is that Berlin itself was deep inside the Soviet-controlled zone of Germany.
So it immediately became this contested island.
A flashpoint. Each power had its own ideas about reconstruction and politics, which set the stage for decades of conflict right there in the ruins. That division was the fault line that would define the next 50 years.
So when we look back, what does this all teach us today? The fall of Berlin wasn't just the end of a war. It was the total collapse of a government built on extreme ideology.
And those ruins became a powerful symbol of what that kind of warfare leads to.
That division of the city, that initial occupation, is what eventually led straight to the construction of the Berlin Wall in the Cold War.
The ripple effect was immense.
I think learning about this history really shows us why international cooperation and a commitment to peace are so essential.
It does. Keep exploring history, keep asking the tough questions, and remember that even from total destruction, the capacity for human recovery is real.
Good luck with your studies.